Hello, welcome back to Marshmallow Reads. I'm Marcy, and today I'm going to tell you about the books I read in August and what I thought about them. First off, we have Horseman, A Tale of Sleepy Hollow by Christina Henry. This is an arc that I got through NetGalley from the publisher, so that just means it's an advanced reader copy, so they send it to book reviewers ahead of time to try to promote this book before its release, and that's how I got access to it. I really enjoyed this version of Sleepy Hollow and the Horsemen. The descriptions of the decomposing corpses were so vivid and awful in a good and spooky way, and it made clear that you do not want to encounter whatever is killing these poor creatures. Like, it was very effective. And everything about the story, from the writing style to the imagery to the dialogue, immerses the reader in this foggy and gloomy world of Sleepy Hollow. I very much enjoyed reading this at the end of summer as a way to get excited about fall. It was perfect. I also love that the main character we follow, Ben, is a trans man. And we get to see his journey from when he is a young kid through adulthood, and it's from a very personal perspective. And it's nice to see a historical fiction acknowledge and highlight the fact that trans people have always been around. It's not like some new invention. As long as there have been people, there have been trans people, and it's just normal. So that was nice. Overall, I thought this was a fun, spooky read with engaging characters in a fantastic setting. I think my favorite part of this whole book was the setting. It was just so immersive and spooky. So if you are a fan of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and its related works, then I think you're gonna really enjoy this novel. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have a graphic novel, The Dire Days of Willowweep Manor by Shaenon K. Garrity and illustrated by Christopher Baldwin. This one was so fun. I'm so happy I picked this one up. The cover, it looks so fun and funny. It got me. And the illustrator, Christopher Baldwin, did such a good job drawing the facial expressions for all the characters. Everyone feels goofy, but also sincere, and it pairs so well with the story's humor. This is a middle grade book, but honestly, I think most readers would enjoy this one. The main character, Haley, is so vibrant and intense in her obsession with gothic romance novels, to the point where her English teacher is literally begging her to write a book report on literally anything but a gothic romance. But will she do it? On her way home one day, Haley spots this dude in a fancy suit nearly drowning in a river, and she jumps in and saves his fancy ass, but also in the process ends up passing out on this rock. And when she wakes up, she realizes that she's in a whole other world, and it is one that very much looks like the various gothic romances that she's been reading. So that's really fun. This story feels like it had so much fun playing around with the various gothic romance tropes, and I had a lot of fun reading it. And if you're looking for a fairly quick and lighthearted, fun graphic novel, then consider checking this one out. I give it a full 5 out of 5 stars. Next is Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. So the main character, Sam, is one of the most popular girls at a pretty homogenous Connecticut school, and Sam and her friends legitimately suck. There's a lot of mean girl tropes going on here. If you are anything but a thin, white, wealthy girl, then watch out, because they are going to shit on you every single day at school, and there's nothing you can do but just let it happen. One Friday night, after some underage drinking and partying, these girls hop in their luxury SUV, and they all end up dying in this horrible car crash. But then Sam wakes up and realizes that it's that Friday again. So now she has to figure out why this time loop is happening and if there's something that she can do about it. Usually these types of stories star a flawed main character that grows over time throughout each time loop, and oh man, does Sam have a lot of room for character development. It's pretty hard to rehabilitate a years-long bully, but Sam seems to be trying her best, I guess. Like, I don't know, I had a hard time feeling like Sam completely made up for the years of bullying that she has done, or at least been somewhat part of, in just like a week's worth of repeats. Like only like 5 to 7 days of Fridays. Like that's not a lot of time. I don't know, I just didn't buy it. And I guess I still liked the ending, even though I thought it felt unearned. And here's just a couple other things that I want to mention because they did negatively impact the story for me. So one, I'm still trying to understand why Lauren Oliver decided to name her like only mentioned Chinese restaurant Cooked Cat. Is that supposed to be funny? Because it really just comes off as massively culturally insensitive. Like, especially when there is not a drop of diversity in this entire book. Like, unless you count white but brunette or white but not wealthy, which I don't. Like, I get that it's Connecticut, but I am just so tired of reading these homogenous ass stories. Like, ugh. So after some reevaluating, I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Next is People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. Poppy and Alex are best friends who met in college, and now Alex is an English teacher teaching in their home state, and Poppy dropped out of college to pursue and actually succeed in her travel blogger career. These two very much seem to be polar opposites, but somehow they fit really well together and were best friends all up until 2 years ago when something happened. You see, Alex and Poppy used to take a yearly vacation together and they would have so much platonic fun. But now they haven't spoken since that something happened 2 years ago at that vacation. And eventually the two decide to try again and they end up vacationing in Palm Springs together because Alex's brother has a wedding there and the two of them are able to go there a little bit early for fun. And Alex and Poppy end up having to share a hotel room that only has one bed and a broken AC unit in the dead of summer. Sounds like a hot and sticky mess. I'm sorry. And because this is a romance, the two eventually do end up having the hots for each other and they're forced to figure out their feelings. So this is the point of the book where it lost me. So like the last 20% of it. Without getting into spoilers, my biggest issue was that these two dunderheads absolutely suck at communicating, and it's clear to everyone around them. But both of them would constantly assume that the other person meant the worst meaning of the thing that they said. To the point where I no longer believe that these two are supposed to be best friends. How could they function if they can't talk to each other? Ugh. And I was so annoyed by how Alex absolutely refuses help. In any situation. You know the type of person. When these people refuse help in order to not be a burden, very often they end up being a burden anyway because the people around them who would like to help them but can't have to deal with them suffering and often complaining about it. Ugh. And it wasn't even that spicy. Every scene where they started kissing or whatever, it would fade to black, and it's not worth putting up everything else about this book. Not really for me. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Next we have a middle grade mystery, The Curse of the Black Cat by Carolyn Keene. This is a Nancy Drew novel, a series that I love, both book-wise, video game-wise. So in this one, Nancy Drew is called to investigate a series of increasingly harmful pranks at this all-girls school. Waverly Academy is a prestigious boarding school that has a lot to lose if the culprit isn't found soon. So what's going on here is that students are being harassed by this mystery curse. And for example, students' lucky basketball shoes are tarred right before a big game. Another student's long, beautiful hair is sheared off the night before the opening night for their play, and so on. And they're all getting these notes saying, "The black cat curses you until the day you die." And they don't know who's behind all this. Like, why are they targeting these girls? Like, what is going on? And this was a fun and short read. Like, it's also the basis for one of my favorite Nancy Drew games, Warnings at Waverly Academy. And I did immediately start playing this as soon as I got done with this book because it was just that nostalgic. Very worth it for me. If you're looking for a cozy little school-based mystery, then consider checking this one out. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next we have Neverworld Wake by Marisha Pessl. Another car full of varying adults crashing and dying on a spooky night. In this version of this story, there are 5 of them who wake up and find out that they're in some sort of limbo. They are on the edge of death, and for some reason, they have to vote to see which one among them is allowed to continue living. And once they vote and, have a unanimous vote, time will continue to pass for them, and the 4 remaining are going to continue on to their true deaths, while that one person is allowed to return to the world of the living. Until then, they will continue to wake up near the car crash and loop that day over and over again. On a bit of a bright note here, at least this time, there's some diversity. One of the white guys is gay. That's different. This story starts off with the teens fucking off to do their own thing for many loops, and we do get a good amount of characterization, seeing what each of them chooses to do with all this time, basically pseudo-immortality, kind of. And after some time, maybe like a few weeks or even a few years of repeating days, the story turns into a murder mystery. When this group was in high school together, they had a 6th friend named Jim, and he was actually like dating B, who's like one of the loopers. Originally, his death was ruled a suicide, but now that they have like all the time in the world, they are going to try to figure out what actually happened the night he died. Honestly, I was a bit lukewarm on this book in the first half, but once it turned into like a murder mystery thing, it really grabbed my attention. I am kind of mad at the ending. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just because I would have done it differently. But whatever. I would still recommend this one, especially over Before I Fall, but I still only gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. Now we have Recursion by Blake Crouch. This had a great plot. There is a newly discovered technology that allows people to travel back to a memory of theirs and restart life from that point in time. And I think that's really neat. And this whole like time loop, memory, travel system was really well thought out and had realistic consequences. But I am reminded once again that Blake Crouch is just probably not the author for me. Like, I read Dark Matter by him and I liked it, but not that much. And I don't know what it is. I think the characters, they feel very human and real to me. And I usually really like character-driven stories, but this one's definitely more plot-driven. But I don't know, it just feels like there's something missing. Or maybe it was just like too grim and gritty for me. Like, I've read these sorts of books over and over again. Like, I don't know, I just want my haggard dads and husbands to do something more than just brood over lost opportunities. Like, I don't know, like the main character in Recursion feels basically identical to the main character in Dark Matter, and I don't know what it is about that. Like, it's just not interesting to me. I don't know, it just didn't hit right for me. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read in August is In the House, in the Dark of the Woods by Laird Hunt. Like, look at this cover. It was perfect. As soon as I saw this in my, like, I don't know, various adventures in BookTube, I knew I had to have it. I bought it almost immediately after seeing it because I didn't really care what the story was about. I knew I was gonna like it, at least because of this cover. Anyway, This is a dark witchy fairy tale a la the Brothers Grimm set in colonial New England, where a woman gets lost in the woods and she keeps trying to get back to her husband and son, but some unknown force keeps pulling her back in. The witchy vibes are immaculate in this book. We have laughing black crows, spooky winding woods, forest witches, bubbling cauldrons, and more. It's wonderful. It also has themes of womanhood, like the role of girls and women in society, both as they were in like colonial times, and seeing how much or really how little they have changed over time. It's a fairly short book, so I'm going to stop there before I, get into too many details. If this aesthetic sounds good to you, I think you're really going to like it. I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. Oh, perfect for spooky season. Next in August, I read Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. So this is a story about a bank robbery. Kind of. It's also about a bridge, but also about a bunch of normal people. So a person that is desperate for rent money decides to rob a bank and ends up in a hostage situation at an apartment viewing nearby. It's a mess. And we get to see the cops questioning these hostages after they've been released because they can't seem to find the bank robber and they think that they are hiding somewhere in the apartment. During all this, you get to learn about the people that they're interviewing, as well as the cops themselves, and even some of the owners of the neighboring apartments. And it's like peeking in a window to take a snapshot of these characters' lives and realizing that basically everyone is struggling to keep it together. They're all in this sort of fake it till you make it mode. And this is a sort of sentiment that I've been feeling more and more as I get older, and that resonated with me. This book certainly does have things to say about society and the people in it, although at times it did feel a bit on the nose for me. But there are also some genuinely touching moments that ultimately warmed me up to this book, and I ended up rating it a 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, the last book I read in August is Spinning by Tillie Walden. This is the same author as On a Sunbeam, so when I saw this in the library, I snatched it up. And this is actually a memoir graphic novel, mostly about ice skating, but also about other things. For 10 years, figure skating was Tillie Walden's life. She woke up at dawn for morning practice, goes to school, and then right after school would go to group practice. And she was good at it. She won so many medals. But she also hated it. Over time, figure skating became less central to her identity as art, and falling in love with her first girlfriend moved more into the spotlight of her life. In many ways, ice skating was no longer compatible with who she wanted to be. And this was a very touching coming-of-age story that I personally enjoyed. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, that was a sort of relatively quick, for me, run through of the books I read in August. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing me blab on about it, and maybe you got a recommendation or two. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you really liked this video, then consider subscribing to my channel for more videos like this. But yeah, that is it for this week. I hope you all have a wonderful week to 2 weeks coming up. Do something nice for yourself. Consider doing something nice for others. And